Dean Chiarelli is a clinical associate professor at the Edson College of Nursing and Health Innovation at ASU. A graduate of Tulane University and the University of Texas at Austin, he holds a Master of Arts degree and is credentialed as a registered dietitian nutritionist, certified clinical exercise physiologist, certified health education specialist, and registered environmental health specialist. His primary responsibility is teaching. In addition, he reviews federal grants, textbooks, publishers' instructional resources, and academic programs within the health sciences discipline. He worked in the private sector for Ecolab as a food and workplace safety specialist. Within this capacity, he performed quality assurance audits for over 40 different national restaurant and hotel corporations across North America and French Polynesia.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. And I really want to show my appreciation for our organizers for putting on such a good program. It takes a lot of work to keep a Zoom conference on track. And I'm happy to see so many people still logged on after a long day. I am here on standby. If there are questions during the chat, I will try to address those as they arise. And I will hang around afterwards if there's any questions for me. I'll turn my camera on and we can end the day hopefully on a happy note. Again, thank you to our organizers and my presentation. It was recorded in advance. Hello, my name is Dean Chiarelli. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and a registered environmental health specialist. This session addresses food system resilience and safety with an emphasis on Arizona's hot urban areas. Food producers face severe disruptions from natural and human-generated hazards, ranging from extreme weather, such as the kind of events that we've seen in the last few years, fires, floods, and drought. The Arizona food system is especially vulnerable to climate change-driven environmental stressors. An overarching question I address here is, what factors enable a food system to prepare for, respond to, and recover from disruptive events that threaten its resilience? Food systems must be able to withstand immediate disruptions such as civil unrest, cyber attacks, and hurricanes, as well as those that have a more gradual impact, such as sea level rise, droughts, and funding cuts. As a result of climate change, extreme weather events such as winter storms, floods, and heat waves are expected to not only increase in frequency, but also be more intense. In this session, I'm going to define some terms: food system resilience and the organizational level variables that affect resilience. I will outline some of the ongoing challenges post-COVID. I will interpret some data from 32 different statistically valid climate models to show what the future holds for Arizona into the 21st century. I will postulate the relationship between climate change with food and waterborne illnesses, and I'll examine the impact of different environmental stressors on the food system. I'll summarize some strategies to promote a healthy and resilient food system with a focus on greenhouse gas risk mitigation and proactive city planning. Natural and human-caused crises can cause damage to food systems and people's access to safe, affordable food. I'm a dietitian, and although I'm not going to focus on this topic in this session, I do want to remark on the situation of food insecurity. The type of climate change variables that are very destructive for developing nations are often not caused by the economies and actions of those countries. They're caused by more wealthy nations, but they bear the brunt of it, which sets a stage for a very inequitable form of food system inequity. Building more resilient food systems ensures a continuous supply of safe, accessible food. By definition, vulnerability is defined as a function of exposure to climate change effects, sensitivity, and the capacity for smart adaptivity. Resilience is the ability to prepare for, withstand, and recover from a crisis or disruption, whether that is anticipated or whether it's completely out of the norm. A resilient food system denotes the infrastructure and processes for growing, harvesting, processing, packaging, distributing, marketing, consuming, and disposing of food and food-related items. That is a mouthful. One might think food is relatively easy. You plant a seed, it grows, you harvest it, you bring it to market, you eat it, everyone's happy, said and done. It's much more complex than that, and there is a chain of custody which is sensitive to the environment. The chain of custody refers to where the food has its point of origin, through all the different processors and handlers, to the places where it actually prepared, all the way to it gets to be on a fork ready to go in someone's mouth. This continuum includes the needed inputs and all the generated outputs. For example, water, equipment, technology, and how we deal with food waste. Food waste is another issue I'm not really going to target in this session, but it's worth noting that about 30 to 40% of all food produced is wasted, thrown away, not used, which also contributes to landfill in addition to all the energy used to produce that food from the very beginning. Multiple factors contribute to disaster preparedness and resilience planning. Formal emergency planning, staff training on protocols, and staff attendance are directly related to the ability to deal with some sort of bad situation. This means having enough workers who can actually operate, that are ready, and have a plan. Infrastructure redundancy refers to different tools and resources that function during disruptive events. Some examples are backup generators, refrigerated trucks, dry ice, burners that provide butane or propane, rain barrels, portable water pumps, snow plows, security guards, cyber communications in case all communication systems are down, and a way to back up data. Inventory redundancy consists of food on hand and resources that help to restock and minimize waste. Insurance coverage helps recovery for losses in businesses, property, vehicles, crops, and workers' compensation. The American Risk Management Agency provides a variety and assortment of actuarially sound crop and livestock-related insurance products. These help producers to manage risks. Coverage is provided against losses due to unavoidable natural perils, such as drought, excessive moisture, fires, hail, wind, hurricanes, tornadoes, lightning, pests, and more. The Southwest region procures an abundance of specialty crop insurance programs for crops that are common in the Southwest and Arizona: fruit, vegetables, nuts, livestock, and cotton. And I'm going to discuss vulnerabilities to those food products later on in the session. Food supplier diversity refers to food suppliers' capacity to address issues with delivery, proper food handling, and the chain of custody. That long process where there's different hands and different stakeholders who handle food, some of which may be highly perishable. Location and backup service providers refers to the collaboration of multiple sites and locations. It's generally beneficial and helpful when there are multiple stakeholders who can provide support during this kind of situation. Adaptive learning consists of post-event debriefing. This is an opportunity to learn lessons from situations that have occurred. This is very helpful when updating emergency plans and guiding future decisions and priorities. Large organizations that are better resourced and affiliated with national or government partners typically demonstrate a lot more resilience and ability to recover when compared to smaller independent and nonprofit organizations. A better understanding of factors contributing to resilience is really necessary to guide the best resilience policy design. Let's look at an example of organizational resilience using greenhouse reduction initiatives. A probable indicator of successful preparedness is whether initiatives are reactive versus proactive. Risk and mitigation are vexing issues. There's no doubt about it. It can be really hard to predict with accuracy the impact or cost of something that did not happen. For example, one might ask, what's the difference between a 100-year flood versus a 500-year flood versus a 1,000-year flood? Do we really know with certainty? Can the common layperson actually answer that? Can an informed professional really answer that? What are the what ifs? What do we need to know? It's really helpful to quantify those to actually have a measurable, actionable outcome. Consider an example where an effective greenhouse gas initiative is successful. Plus, the system is ready for emergencies. This is an ideal situation, one that we should all hopefully aspire for. But one might also ask, why are we doing this? Everything seems fine. This is a lot of hard work. We're not really seeing the benefit. But we actually are seeing a benefit in that when something bad does not happen, it actually is a good sign. It means that the system is working. So an ideal situation is when we have good initiatives implemented and they work successfully. Researchers measure resilience using different kinds of qualitative and quantitative tools at different levels, including supply chains, the city, and community levels. I'm going to summarize some COVID challenges that we've seen over the last couple of years and then dive into climate change and models. COVID has accelerated some existing challenges and issues. For the first time in my life, I saw food hoarding and extreme anxiety about food security. I saw people buying multiple units of toilet paper at Costco. I saw people fighting over water at Walmart. I saw people buying large amounts of sanitizer and selling them on digital platforms like Amazon, etc. This was troubling and something that one might think would only be in a drama or horror movie. Delivery and transport started to be problems in 2021. Exports and importers struggled to get the right kinds of containers, trailers, and common staples to get their products to market. Ports were severely congested due to closures. I don't know today in 2022 if ports are still congested, but I am still hearing very often that supply chain is an issue that's preventing markets from having fully supplied stock, and it's probably contributing to the persistent inflation that we're seeing now. Food prices in the year 2021 hit their highest level in 13 years due to increased product and transport costs, supply chain snags, and labor shortages. In 2022, inflation reached the fastest pace in 4 decades, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Inflation still persists due to strong demand and restrained supply, even though recently interest rates have gone up very significantly, almost double what they were even just a year ago. In the Southwest, there are ongoing concerns about drought and water shortages. Longer term, experts say climate will have complex and variable effects on agriculture depending on geography. We're likely to continue to see extreme drought. It's projected to cause major crop and pasture losses. Next, I'm going to provide an overview of climate change. This slide refers to a remarkable article that appeared in the United Kingdom publication called The Guardian. I found this article very insightful that England would report about the City of Phoenix Heat Mitigation Office and how there seems to be loopholes in city processes that enable urban heat to continue despite many initiatives that exist that aren't fully implemented. Developers have loopholes that seem to be a hindrance to successful urban growth that allows growth to happen. Growth is generally good. I personally am pro-development, but at the same time, to not contribute to the existing problems that we have with climate change. Climate impact change is variable. Some areas will experience supply chain disruption, market volatility, and price hikes. Some areas may actually benefit from climate change. Areas that are in the far north that typically haven't had success with certain kinds of crops and yields may benefit from having slightly modulated temperatures, which allow existing crops to flourish and thrive more, or new crops may be introduced and will contribute towards economic development and prosperity. Next, I'm going to summarize climate change data going back to the last century, 1975. Hello, my name is Dean Chiarelli. I know there are people who believe that climate change is not real or that it's exaggerated. I'm not here to argue that point. The next slides provide valid, reliable, and verifiable data to back up my statements. You can interpret it for yourselves. This figure shows historic national average temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit from 1975 to 2005. Most of the United States is getting warmer, and on average, it's much warmer. There's some places that are cooler, and those places are typically those more prone to flooding. It's worth noting the Phoenix increase on this slide is greater than 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit, but it doesn't exactly say by how much. One might ask, how much higher than 1.5 degrees is it really? I'm going to provide my interpretation based on 32 different statistically significant climate change models and what it means looking for Arizona in the 21st century and onwards. This slide shows projected temperature increases during the next century. The largest temperature increases will occur in the summer months, June, July, and August, across much of the Southwest region. On the slide, you can see that there are lower and higher ranges. The amount of change within the ranges will be directly connected to the decisions and actions we take right here, right now. This slide refers to the mid-21st century, looking at the years 2036 through 2065. The lower scenario range is an increase of 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit. The upper scenario range is 4 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit. Late in the 21st century, where I probably won't be here, but a desert turtle that you'll see in a photo in this presentation hopefully will still be here, along with some other animals. Late in the 21st century, from 2071 to 2100, the lower scenario range is projected to be 4 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit. The upper scenario, 8 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. These are significant, substantial differences, and I think we're already beginning to see these and experience these now, especially in Phoenix. Next, I will outline the current situation as manifested by different impacts. This slide outlines current climate change trends taken from the 4th National Climate Change Assessment published by the U.S. Global Change Research Design in 2017. The next edition will be published in 2023. We're currently experiencing the warmest period in the history of modern civilization. I don't think anyone can really argue that. We don't have excellent digital thermometer readings from 500 years ago. I do think it's fair to say we are living in hot times. We're seeing a manifestation of that in surface, atmospheric, and oceanic temperature changes. There are effects of this. Increasing ocean water evaporation as a result of the hydrological cycle being sped up due to climate warming. This has significant impacts on precipitation and the systems that rely on reliable sources of precipitation, such as agriculture. We're seeing shrinking sea ice, diminished snow cover, melting glaciers, rising sea levels, and ocean acidification. Scientists project anticipated changes to expect. This slide outlines anticipated trends for climate change. I hesitate to even say anticipated because I think we're already experiencing some of these now. Longer, warmer summers, shorter, mild winters, fewer frost days, more intense heat waves, less intense cold waves, and an increased number of unpredictable extreme weather events. I think we can fairly say we've all observed just in the last year or two extreme weather events. In my opinion, it's just going to get worse every year. Look at all the forest fires, the terrible storms, really heavy precipitation leading to massive flooding that includes the destruction and loss of life. One might ask, what's this got to do with infection, disease, and food safety? Climate change can lead to changes in temperature and precipitation, which increases or expands the incidence and geographical ranges of multiple diseases. Climate variables include temperature and precipitation. These variables impact the replication, interaction, and survival of disease agents in animals, disease vectors in the environment. Climatic disturbances includes droughts and intense storms. These disturbances influence the disease occurrence patterns, and they have the potential to cause serious, severe damage to vital infrastructure. Next, I'll summarize some of the climate-sensitive food and waterborne diseases tracked by the Center for Disease Control. Infrastructure damage caused by extreme weather threatens food and water systems. Damage creates conditions favorable to contamination. This slide lists some of the foods and waterborne diseases for which the Center for Disease Control tracks. We're likely to see increased incidence and a wider range of distribution geographically for these diseases. Cryptosporidium, Salmonella, Giardia, Naegleria fowleri, Vibrio, and harmful algal blooms. Next, I'll address the risks that climate change poses to agriculture and food protection, and I'll dive into how some Arizona crops traditionally produced here are vulnerable. I got interested in this topic by attending Village Planning Committee and Phoenix Planning Commission meetings. I'm concerned how consistently the majority of higher density rezoning cases seem to be approved despite strong community opposition. It seems an exception when proposals are approved that actually build within the current zoning for which there are city plans, codes, amendments that have been worked on by many professionals for many years. This trend of high approval of higher density residential and commercial development is counteractive for greenhouse gas mitigation, especially in some of the sensitive environments that I'm going to discuss here. Some negative impacts of increased heat on agriculture are extended dry periods. It's likely there is less water for irrigation, washing, flood processing. There's increased fungi and mycotoxins. Drought weakens plants and warmth encourages fungal growth. We also will see increased use of pesticides and veterinary drugs. Pests and rodents increase during hot periods, and heat stresses animals, including pets, our beloved animals, cats and dogs and turtles, which may need to be evacuated more frequently as severe weather events happen. Many agricultural areas in Arizona are especially sensitive to environmental changes. Even a small change of 2 degrees can threaten the existence of agricultural enterprises. Arizona's monsoon season occurs from about the middle of June all the way through September, and it significantly controls summer precipitation. Some areas receive half of their total annual rain in July and August alone. Climate change increases heavy precipitation and brings runoff that can cause microbial pathogen spread, toxins, and chemicals in floodwater. I live in South Phoenix, just a few hundred yards away from South Mountain Park, one of the largest mountain parks or urban parks in North America, and I live very close to Grandma's Farm and the Arizona Worm Farm. Both locations are subject to stress from water runoff. In particular, the Arizona Worm Farm is an urban farm with a zero waste philosophy. According to their website, it focuses on sustainability, soil improvements, and turning garbage into food. That makes me sing and dance. It uses insects, especially worms, to create natural gardening products. In 2021, that summer that was especially hot, the sustained high temperatures were within 2 degrees of being too hot to maintain worm populations. The slightly moderated temperatures in the valley, especially in the South Phoenix part of the valley, necessitate careful development and heat mitigation. Unfortunately, dwellings and streets are natural heat sinks. When the evening temperatures rise from heat radiation from those sinks, the daily temperature also increases. Environmentally sensitive areas are especially vulnerable. The more cars, the more houses, the more higher density, the more likely agricultural enterprises will not be able to thrive, and quality of life may be impacted by excessive ongoing heat. The prior system of water rights appropriation will favor holders of older water rights. Neighbors with newer rights could have no access to water. This establishes a troubling legal divide that's contrary to sustainable community-based management for agriculture and ecosystems. Historically, this has been a limiting factor to adoptability. Climate change will now further necessitate the need to modify prior water rights appropriation systems. Holders of old water rights may also lease or sell those rights. One point to add is in areas that are zoned for agriculture that have flood irrigation, when those forms of irrigation are taken away, they're gone forever. And it's worth noting the impact that they may have. For example, a developer might come in, successfully achieve rezoning for an area that has that type of irrigation, the capacity may be lost, and then that developer may not actually build on that land, or it may stay vacant for years before a developer actually builds. So I feel, in my opinion, we need to look very carefully at changing zoning to remove precious water from areas where it is now a very highly precious resource. I'm going to examine the impact on food systems and production. Some negative impacts of increased heat on agriculture are reduced yields caused by elevated temperatures, especially for grain crops. High nighttime temperatures increase the rate and decrease the length of the grain filling period. This means that grain yields are smaller. Crops tend to fail at elevated temperatures. For example, warm season vegetable crops may become no longer viable. Temperature increases beyond optimum thresholds, such as those projected for the year 2050 and beyond, can cause large decreases in crop yields. Entire crop viability is likely to be reduced in the future. The cumulative impact of fewer cold spells, extended frost-free seasons, and more frequent heat waves will accelerate the maturing and ripening of crops. This will likely reduce yields and increase the water needs. Crop production is likely to shift north, displacing existing growers. Even small changes of 2 degrees can threaten the existence of some Arizona agriculture. Pests persist and new pests emerge. A few years of warmer weather can allow invading pests to get established and spread. If these pest populations can secure warmer microclimates, they may survive the winter and become more prevalent earlier in the following season. Initial changes in disease distribution are probably going to happen for some vector-borne diseases. Pollinators may become even more vulnerable. Many specialty crops, such as almonds, watermelons, and cherries, are completely dependent on insect population. Bee populations have declined drastically in the last 10 years. The contribution of herbicides, pesticides, pathogens, habitat loss, and climate change are stressors that actually have a measurable impact. Both native pollinators and managed bee colonies appear to be at risk. This has a ripple effect. Extreme weather affects growth, sales, water quality, and the ability for agricultural communities to thrive. The timing of extreme events is critical because they may happen at a time of weak crop growth and result in much lower productivity. This makes producers very vulnerable. The Southwest produces more than half of the nation's high-value specialty crops. Drought and extreme weather can affect the market value of fruits and vegetables more than other crops because sales depend on looking good, having a nice, plump, ripe, colorful fruit or vegetable is highly prized, and those crops have higher water content. I'll briefly summarize some Arizona-specific crop vulnerabilities. Arizona and California combined grow 95% of the nation's lettuce, which is pretty amazing considering how highly perishable that crop is. Warm temperatures can cause bolting, which means the thickening and lengthening of the stalk. This causes bitterness and the product to be less attractive. Warm nights can promote abnormally rapid growth that can cause what's known as tip burn in lettuce. This is a disorder in which calcium can't be transported quickly enough to the edge of the leaves, therefore the leaves shrivel and blacken. The most important temperature risk is occasional hot days that exceed the optimum threshold. A product that's bolted, bitter, or wilted has very little or no commercial value. Unfortunately, a lot of food waste. Arizona and New Mexico grow 1% of the nation's pistachios. Pistachios need about 40 inches of irrigation each year, comparable to almonds and walnuts. However, unlike almonds, and walnuts, pistachios can grow pretty well under deficit irrigation, reducing their water needs to about 30 inches of irrigation per year. When stressed, pistachio trees can survive for about 1 year with zero water, but they will have very low or no yields of nuts. Under damp conditions, pistachios are susceptible to fruit, fungal, and leaf diseases. Climate change will have a variable impact on the prevalence of pistachio diseases. On one hand, drought may cause low yields. On the other hand, excessive moisture might cause fungal diseases. Major pistachio pests, such as the navel orangeworm, grow faster under warmer temperatures, which necessitates integrated pest control. So overall, climate vulnerabilities also bring the need to have different kinds of pest control than what has been used before successfully. Cabbage is typically a cool season crop grown in many locations in the Southwest, including western Arizona. California and Arizona account for about 29% of national cabbage production. With prolonged temperatures above 80 Fahrenheit, cabbage may bolt. Water limitations are a major concern. The cabbage crops need a constant and uniform level of moisture in the soil, which makes drip irrigation not really effective. Crops are susceptible to disease and insects. High soil temperatures enable an infection called fusarium, which is facilitated when nighttime temperatures are above 50 Fahrenheit and days are above 60 Fahrenheit, respectively. These facilitate damage by the Bagrata bug. Although cotton is not really a food, I'm going to incorporate cotton because it is historically a crop of prize and one of the 5 C's of Arizona. Cotton is still grown in the lower desert because cotton canopies can be a lot cooler than the surrounding air temperature. All southwestern cotton is irrigated, and poor fruit retention is associated with high humidity, which inhibits radiative cooling at night. Humidity from the summer monsoons is a factor that most significantly affects production. Solar radiation in the Southwest is already very high, and it's the main factor driving water usage. Climate change may alter the geographical areas that cotton can grow and possibly force it to move to higher elevations. If conditions warm to the point where cotton won't grow in a typical summer, the product may need to shift seasons where solar radiation is lower and where water is not necessarily needed as much. Also, farmers may need to rely more on genetic engineering to get types that will actually grow in the environment. Corn is grown in the Southwest for grain and silage purposes. Of the Southwest's top 6 counties that produce corn for grain, only Cochise County, Arizona, is outside of California. Most corn grain in the region is irrigated. Temperature increase, drought, and elevated levels of carbon dioxide will likely decrease production and yields. Corn requires fertilization, and it may be sensitive to weeds, diseases, and insect pests. The cumulative effects of temperature, drought, and other sensitivities make corn growth in the region highly vulnerable, especially looking at the high temperatures projected in the 21st century and beyond. Producers may benefit from planting earlier by ensuring adequate irrigation and by selecting cultivar seeds that are drought resistant whenever they can. In comprehensive livestock production, small changes in maximum temperature can reduce greatly productivity through livestock losses, decreases in weight gain, and lower milk production. Reduced long-term livestock raising capacities does have an impact. In drier, more arid conditions, this results in primary production of less than 500 pounds per acre per year. Reduced long-term average primary production will directly increase financial costs and reduce already inherently low rates of return, financial return, from rangeland livestock enterprises. We also see reduced air quality and water quality. Climate change effects in the Southwest rangelands will likely decrease net primary productivity. Livestock production is highly dependent upon harvested forages. Forages is the stuff that cattle eat, which will likely diminish during periods of drought and dormant season or when there's fires. Pastures and rangelands are mainly rain-fed, in other words, non-irrigated, and they're highly vulnerable to droughts. We'll also see reduced forage quality. Both harvested forages and rangeland forests may have increased fiber content, which reduces the digestibility. Increased ambient temperatures will also decrease forage quality and digestibility. Forage quality declines result in not only lower nutrient density for livestock, but also reduced animal performance. Consumers' demand for grass-fed beef is very much reliant on producers' ability to manage forage quality, and it will likely place upwards pressure for producers to get nutritionally adequate forage supplies, which will be exceedingly difficult in the future to acquire due to drought and these conditions I've described so far. There are constraints on the preparedness of ranch communities. Communities may not be adequately ready for the financial and management requires, even where long droughts are common or even predictable. The average age of Southwest beef producers is about 58 years. Rebuilding is really hard. It's costly and can take a long time, many years, even for well-prepared ranchers. Many farmers in Arizona are approaching retirement age, which is about 61 years of age, and food producers struggle to find employees. There is a lack of agriculture workforce development resources. Looking at recent experiences in the Midwest indicate that older producers may decide to sell out rather than rebuild their ranching operations following drought and persistent arid conditions. When I say sell out, I don't mean that to sound like a bad thing. As it came out of my mouth, I realized selling out is a compromise. They may decide it's no longer viable to continue in the businesses, many of which are family run, that have allowed for families to enjoy prosperity for many years. This could lead to a generational shift to younger ranchers who may be more progressive and less experienced to address these serious events that are arising. I will target greenhouse gas mitigation strategies. This slide shows strategies to reduce the production of greenhouse gases. There are different things we can do to reduce production. We can try to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. We can prioritize the investment of alternative fuels. We can plant trees purposefully. We can strive to reduce deforestation unless it's absolutely necessary. We can also reduce methane produced by livestock animals and from leaky wells. Lower emissions from enteric fermentation in cows is very variable, and it depends on the type of livestock, whether it is one that grazes or is fed from lots, and the type, life stage, and activity of the livestock. Diet modifications, such as increasing fat or protein and providing higher quality forage, may be helpful, as is providing supplements. The full impact of these strategies is not fully evaluated for the potential to quantify mitigation risk reduction. This slide shows strategies to mitigate effects of greenhouse gases. To mitigate effects, we should strive to capture methane from fermentation of landfills and manure. Ideally, we should select crops which thrive in particular environments. We should retire marginal croplands and establish conservation cover, wetlands, and windbreak whenever we can. We should also try to increase soil and irrigation efficiency by using precision agriculture. By definition, precision agriculture is a science of improving crop yields and assisting management decisions by using high technology sensors and analytic tools. I'm going to provide a brief outline of what's cooking in Maricopa County. This slide shows a City of Phoenix report on greenhouse gases, some key areas addressed in this report. I've lived in Phoenix now for 12 years, and I can say honestly, it's changed so much in many good ways, and in some ways that concern me. It's changing really fast. The goal that you see here on the right for a resilient food system is not just for food, It extends to quality of life and community health. Phoenix and Arizona face pressures from urbanization, climate change, political and economic shifts, and population growth. Today's actions impact tomorrow's quality of life and the years after. Phoenix, in my opinion, is actively striving to be an agriculture and innovation hub, as demonstrated by the Arizona Fresh infrastructure project. In my opinion, the future farming is hydroponics, vertical gardens, aquaponics, indoor farming, crop-specific cultivars, and more. What does climate change mean? I will tell you, for me in the future, it means that we preserve tradition, the good elements that make a high quality of life and joy, and adopt to the future so that Phoenix and Arizona can continue to have a productive food culture and production system. The next few slides indicate City of Phoenix recommendations to achieve the goal of a resilient food system, focusing on sustainable food systems and water use. According to the Central Arizona Land Trust, between the years 2012 and 2017, the number of farms statewide fell by 5%, but in Maricopa County, the decline was much higher at 24%. We've lost 200 acres or more of prime farmland within the last year or two. Many people are familiar with the concept, not in my backyard, sometimes known in short as NIMBYism. I'm experiencing and observing a trend that is similar to NIMBYism, but quite different in that it focuses on the developer's perspective. Personally, I'm pro-development. I believe that cities should pursue and will benefit from smart growth using plans that are developed by urban planners, political activists, community members, elected officials, industry, and more. I feel that we have those plans for a reason. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into developing those, and they hold a great degree of value and should be respected. Some people make the decisions to invest in a certain area based on looking at those plans and having a sense of what is in the future for those areas. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing is a approach where there's an unwritten understanding that development and rezoning are a right. The key part in that is rezoning is a right. Even though that might not be stated, in some cases it might be denied, what I'm seeing is the vast majority of proposals are for higher density, whether it's residential or commercial, and there's a prevailing theme of those approvals being accepted, even when there's strong community opposition, even when the development process consists of all the checks and balances of going into communities, asking for their input. I'm seeing a troubling trend of very high levels of rezoning, where the majority is rezoning. So based on NIMBYism, I thought of, on my way driving here today, NIMBYism. Maybe you're hearing that here first for the first time. I'm not really sure. NIMBYism is my acronym for not in my development yet, which basically taps into the view that developers feel if they were approved for rezoning here at this level, it's only fair that we're allowed to get approved when we want to do this here. We'll go through the checks and balances. We'll ask the community. As a community member who's been in some of those meetings, my impression has been they're asking, but they're not really listening. And the community is very clearly has certain baseline requirements, and the developer's response is, well, they won't work with us. They're not cooperating. So by the time a proposal goes through all the checks and balances, the goalposts have been changed. The prevailing view is if we have enough fight in us, enough lawyers, we can make the case based on precedent. We will also be able to rezone in this area too. That's smart and sensible sometimes. Not every development should stay within the plan that the city comes up with. But when you see drip, 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 and I'm not talking about water drips and irrigation here, I'm talking about this neighborhood here is rezoned, this commercial business here is rezoned, higher density, higher density, higher density. Overall, the impact of that, I don't think anyone can argue, is a contribution towards greenhouse gas emission, which is counterproductive for a lot of what I'm talking about here. So regarding land use, I live in an area that is traditionally agricultural and has a great feel and quality of life. We should amend zoning law to allow certain types of urban agriculture, such as hydroponics, indoor farming, vertical agriculture, and more, and maintain those as best uses for land. We should also develop land trusts for which cities buy land to preserve for best use as agri-tainment and food production. And I won't mention names of businesses here. I don't think I'm allowed or should do that. I love businesses that grow their own food, where you can go for an afternoon, have farmers market day, bring your kids, you walk, you learn. Those are wonderful days to spend in Arizona. I also encourage the incorporation of healthy food access into land use and really recognize and act upon areas that are officially recognized as food deserts. There are many. I advocate that we develop new financial resources for food production and infrastructure. Arizona Fresh is an example of that. Ideally, we should incorporate food production, processing, and distribution into future economic development plans and establish a local food buying preference in city future contracts. I think there's a great deal of benefit to convene local farmers with city staff, elected officials, and other stakeholders to build trust and understanding. I advocate that we develop policies and actions that plan for future shocks related to climate change, hazards, population growth, etc. I also feel that it's important, and this isn't only because I work someone in this field, that we actually create full-time administrative jobs that are valued to support food systems, jobs that are focused on administration, coordination, and innovation. There's a lack of participation in agriculture workforce development that's really adjusting to the imminent retirements on the horizon. People interested in urban farming or even adding a greenhouse to their home face a challenging permit process. Ideally, from the point of view of education and training, we should try to buy community food, support the businesses that grow local. No food, no farm. No farm, no food. We should infuse curriculum into education. We can take an opportunity to teach about agriculture, food production, the ecosystem, by including that content in a biology lesson, per se, or a social studies lesson. I'll speak to the last topic of education training using Arizona Fresh, the infrastructure project, as an example. Arizona Fresh is a multi-phase City of Phoenix infrastructure project for Del Rio development. According to the website, the goal is to create a national leading source of innovation and education in the production and distribution of food. The location is on the south side of Salt River, between 7th Street and 16th Street, less than a 10-minute drive from my home near South Mountain. Main elements are a wholesale production distribution center, retail food market, community park, education and resource facilities, and some redevelopment of the actual river area as a riparian area. The project is undergoing environmental studies, and some permits have been requested from the City of Phoenix. In my opinion, Arizona Fresh is a great example of a means to celebrate the agricultural heritage of the Valley in a fresh and modern way. Personally, I would love to see a concept such as a food donation system. We know that a lot of food is wasted, food that could potentially be donated in a way where the chain of custody is maintained, risk mitigation is done. I personally would like to see us tackle that to reduce food waste and bring food to people who would benefit from it. And I also would like to see a concept such as a ugly food cafe, which I wouldn't call it that. Basically a concept where food that is appealing and healthy and in good shape, but not perfect for Costco or Whole Foods or Fry's or wherever food is purchased, could be used, not thrown away, in food service operation that celebrates that the food is still edible and was repurposed for consumption in a fun, entertaining venue. I imagine art galleries and live music and date nights and whatever, a lot of opportunity. I'll summarize some of the elements in the Phoenix Water Smart Initiative. The Colorado River is in decline It's experiencing right now the driest conditions it's seen for over 1,200 years. Lake Mead is only at 31% capacity and currently has only enough storage in it to last a year for 3 lower basin states. Lake Powell is at 24% capacity and may be about 30 feet from dead pool conditions. Dead pool is a dire situation in which water may not physically be able to be moved out of a reservoir based on constraints in the infrastructure. The good news is that the city's been preparing for drought for decades. I'll describe some of the actions that Water Services is taking in response. In 1990, the city developed the first drought preparedness plan. The state of Arizona requires the department to maintain a plan. This plan was reaffirmed in 2021, and it consists of 4 stages ranging from water alert to water crisis. This slide identifies some of the events that help the city to prepare for prolonged drought conditions due to over-allocation and climate change. A Stage 1 alert was declared in June 2022. It's a signal to customers that we face challenges with the Colorado River. Under Stage 1, the city will increase public education, water conservation efforts, and information programs to help customers impacted and give them an understanding of the situation and the need to voluntarily conserve. One might ask, what does Stage 1 really mean for customers? During the early stages of a stressed water supply, the city will ask customers to voluntarily evaluate and reduce their water use in ways that will minimally impact their lifestyles. There are no mandatory reductions at this stage. I'll summarize some examples of progress. The City of Phoenix has identified examples of progress. The program has converted cooling towers and xeriscape landscaping at the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. Some city parks installed smart controllers that keep sprinklers from turning on when it rains. City Hall has been undergoing a plumbing and sewer retrofit remedy to address low-efficiency appliances. The city is also reducing unaccounted water losses that come from water that leaves the plants but doesn't actually get delivered to the endpoint. Somewhere in that pipeline, it doesn't get accounted for, it evaporates or disappears. Based on this program, losses went down to 8.5% from 10% in prior years. Even though 1.5% sounds like a relatively small amount, when you look at the amount of water, that actually is a big accomplishment. Many people don't know how much water they actually need to apply to their yards. The water budget calculator removes the guesswork. It enables the user to put in some basic numbers about a yard, and it tells one exactly how much water is needed to apply every single month. Then this information is really helpful to plan water use, whether it's with a hose or some type of irrigation controller. This information is hosted in English and Spanish. The city provides water education from the cloud, not a rain cloud, a digital cloud. The education resources are readily available in a digital format. Historically, education has been done through physical paper, which can be very challenging and tedious. Moving this information so that it's digitized and in a cloud is great. It's a valuable resource, and it also is available in English and Spanish. Phase 1 focuses on expanding existing programs that work pretty well. Phase 2 focuses on expansion of newer programs that have started to take hold. A good example of Phase 2 is the Smart Irrigation Controller Subsidy. This is a program that Salt River Project has operated for a couple of years. It helps connect people and customers to irrigation controllers so that irrigation controllers don't work when it rains. Even though it doesn't seem like it rains a whole lot here in Phoenix, there actually is a fairly high amount of rain that occurs when it's aggregated over all the households in 1 year. The city plans to expand the HOA Homeowners Association Efficiency Checkup Program. Homeowners associations are some of the biggest water users, and they can be a point of centralized decision-making where staff can efficiently reach out and make big changes in overall water use. These focus on making sure the HOAs match their water budgets by comparing the water budget to the actual use that's happening. By doing this, one can identify leaks or where miswatering is happening. The city's working to develop a program that will recognize communities that participate and those that build civic pride from doing so. Consumers often want to do the right thing and don't know quite how to do so. A quick and simple solution is the free Xeriscape plans for residential customers. Any customer can go and download a quick list of materials to bring to the big box store or gardener, local nursery, so they can implement these plans. The city is partnering with other sustainable cities in a network within ASU and beyond to develop other municipalities and across the state for higher use of this program. Door hangers are a simple intervention whereby any City of Phoenix employee who's going about their day and observes water misuse can place a door hanger on the sign to alert the customer that maybe they're misusing water. These are available in English and Spanish. For example, users are encouraged to water early in the morning, and if an employee sees water that's spraying on the sidewalk or from a broken valve really early in the morning, the homeowner might not know that it's leaking, and they could be alerted by a simple door hanger. Next, I'll address Plan 3 phasing. These are programs that take longer for benefits to accrue, but they're good investments for us to make now so that we can reap many benefits in the future. Phoenix has a toilet retrofit program which has covered 100% of the cost, typically in low-income communities. The program has the potential to provide funding for a non-government organization to go out and do this kind of work while they're already in a home doing other types of home repairs. The rebate will provide about $75 per customer for anybody at any income level. The city's currently determining whether the best method to deliver the rebate is a bill credit or a direct check. I hope it's a check. Youth education is highly impactful, but it can take a long time for those benefits to be visible. So far in 2022, the city had 6 in-person water festivals and 1 virtual event. A focus of education is to remove the barriers for teaching water conservation in the classroom. This consists of aligning existing water conservation materials with the state standards. When a teacher picks up the materials, they know what standard they're teaching to, and they explain that easily to their administration. Updating building codes consists of collaboration with planning and development departments. It's very important to ensure that the lessons learned are passed along in new code review. An example of that would be the cooling towers that I mentioned a moment ago. As it stands right now, in summary, Phoenix is on track. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 is in progress. Phase 3 is just beginning. To put that into perspective and context, when complete, these programs annually will save enough water to fill 10,000 swimming pools or more. I'll summarize the heat mitigation response. Phoenix Office of Heat Response and Mitigation, known in short as ORM or Heat Ready Phoenix, is leading the efforts in our hottest, largest city in the United States to fight urban heat. It's hard to deny that it's not a growing hazard. ORM focuses on heat response, which means helping people cope with hot weather, and heat mitigation, which means cooling the city and making it more comfortable for everyone. Year-round, ORM coordinates programs and policies to help lower temperatures. It also tracks trends, collects data, and collaborates with other organizations to share ideas and solutions when it comes to dealing with heat. I've consulted with that office. A lot of the resources I'm sharing here today are from that office. I'm a firm believer it's a huge, great step in the right direction. The next slide will highlight some of the important programs. Cool Callers is a program that consists of volunteers calling and checking in on people during extreme heat. Heat Relief Supplies is a program in which local nonprofit and charitable organizations that conduct heat relief in Maricopa County can request free supplies. Some examples of supplies for individuals are misters, hats, sunscreen. Examples of organizational supplies are coolers, insulated backpacks, wagons, and more. The next few slides show citations used in my session. If you're still here and listening, Thank you. I greatly appreciate you being here. Hopefully, you're finding some actionable content. You're free to look and evaluate the citations. The sources in the session are from government reports and summaries, peer-reviewed journals, some popular press reporting, and City Phoenix guidance documents. The photos used are used with permission according to fair use standards, and some of my friends and neighbors have provided some of those of wildlife in the South Mountain area. I will conclude where I started. What does climate change mean? We live in a hot place that will only get hotter than ever before, and probably at a pace that necessitates action sooner than later. I view climate change as a winnable battle. I'm going to ask a question, not expecting an answer, but a question that some might find bold or even a nuisance. Why are we waiting to address climate change? If not now, then when? Disruptive hazards are likely to increase in severity and frequency. I know I'm seeing that in the types of reports that I look at, and also my own experience living in Arizona. Climate change necessitates adaptive responses that incorporate short-term and long-term strategies that are proactive, not reactive. Now is the time to use with full force the many tools and resources available to us. One can aspire and dream. I truly aspire that individuals and stakeholders, both big and small, will voluntarily do their part in a balanced way so the populations can enjoy high quality of life. We can live in an economic world where development is valued and benefits all, and that we have sustainable growth today so that we can enjoy tomorrow and the day after. Thank you all for being here. I truly appreciate your time, and let's do this.
Thank you for that awesome presentation. And I believe we do have Dean with us still. Yes, there you are. So any questions, guys, feel free to put them in the chat, or again, you can raise your hand and you can ask it that way.
Thank you for being troopers and staying to the end of today. Greatly appreciate it. I know it's a long day. See a question, how does climate change affect mental health? I think it is related to health disparities. I know I've been to some meetings at City Hall where homeless people have gone and stated, we're losing people, they're dying, we need more help, which is one of the reasons the heat mitigation office is getting involved. As far as data is concerned, I don't have any to report other than I'm originally from Canada and I'm looking forward to being able to spend time in Canada during the summer. I think heat is affecting everyone I know in a way that you can basically measure. Everyone I know is stressed almost. I don't mean to sound like a big downer, but I think it's a good question. Someone has data on it in Arizona specifically. I know we have Healthy People 2030. I don't think there's any leading health indicators in Arizona that tackle that specifically. I think it's a really good question. If someone knows, I would love to know. As far as I can see, that was the only question for me. If there are others, please let me know. How do you see the roles of sanitarians in terms of extreme weather and drought planning? I think we'll see activity with sanitarians in disaster response. If we have outbreaks due to flooding, fire, extreme wind that affects supply chains, we might see food that should be discarded in need of embargo or some type of action like that. I do think, I talked a little bit about zoning in this presentation. In my opinion, Phoenix is not on the right track with the excessive rezoning. I encourage people that are concerned about climate change to make your voices known as professionals to the City Planning Commission to not authorize every single approval for higher density, higher density, higher density. I personally am a member of the Levine Village Planning Committee. I joined it because I attended some meetings in South Mountain Village where basically there's speed approvals. I think we as professionals in public health should voice our concerns about climate change. I mentioned in the presentation about not only food safety, but quality of life, community health. I think we're at that point where heat is a threat to that. And through policy change and giving our input as professionals, that will enable us to make some changes. On a technical level, I do think we're going to see the need for disaster mitigation through outbreaks. I was very happy to hear Dr. Reynolds' presentation about water, how water has different breaches in the pipeline. How did water get into those different receptacles? I mean, fecal matter. I mean, I found that fascinating. I think with excess precipitation, we're going to see more of that, and we're going to have to address it as professionals and be vigilant. We're going to see more Vibrio. There's a session on Vibrio today. I found that very interesting. Oysters. Who's thinking Arizona oysters are a thing? Well, we have a lot of seafood restaurants, a lot of really good culinary options, and that's a thing here. If anyone else has thoughts about that, I would love to hear them too. And I'm going to scroll up a little bit. I see a question that I missed. Is the savings you discussed about with filling 10,000 swimming pools immediate or over time? I think it's annually based on that program. Based on the Phoenix Water Smart Drought Plan, 10,000 swimming pools per year based on the procedures that are in place right now. So as I mentioned in the presentation, Phoenix is in a stage 1 drought right now. It's anticipated there will be a stage 2 next year. I think we have a system in place to go up to phase 3, but likely next year, I predict that we're going to see water restrictions here, and we're all going to have to tighten our belts a little bit. And that's all the questions I see. If there's another one, please let me know. Great point. Politics are so hard to deal with at times. I agree. I'm so not political. I'm from a family that's very political. I am not. But recently, I've had to participate in the process with climate change and these things that are going on, because I do think our drip, drip, drip makes a difference. You know, I talked about the Phoenix HOA water efficiency program. I'll mention right now, I live in a community that's supposed to be LEED certified in South Phoenix. I'm in an area that was rezoned. I attended the meeting where it was rezoned for less than what the developers were trying to get. And there's a huge amount of water wasted here, like gallons. The HOA ignores us. We're not responsible for it. It's the developer still. But I went as a registered sanitarian to our one annual HOA meeting, which was last week. We have one a year. And I talked about the HOA efficiency program, how we have to do better. We're LEED certified. This is shameful that this beautiful community is wasting all this water. We have to do better. And yesterday there was an email e-blast that went out saying, we're going to consider the HOA efficiency program. I, as a homeowner, am not allowed to sign up or demonstrate interest. It has to be the developer, no homeowners on the association. So these kind of things, I'm delighted that maybe we'll get that program here. It's in place in 6 different communities in Phoenix right now. I think it's a great program, and it makes it easy to do something that's a hard task to tackle. Phoenix has great programs and initiatives, and I think as professionals, we need to really focus on implementing it. Not only Phoenix, but statewide. I mean, climate change is affecting everywhere. Tucson, Yuma, Flagstaff, Western Arizona, Wilcox, where fruit is grown. I mean, it affects a lot of us. So I see a question, how do you think higher density contributes to climate change due to greater heat island effect? It does make for less sprawl. Yes, as I mentioned in this presentation, the area that I live does have agricultural businesses. They are at risk of not being able to thrive if the temperature gets to be 2 degrees higher. I do think, looking at the data from the climate change models, we definitely are getting hotter. I think there's not really any way you can argue that it's not if you have a scientific mind and look at it. There's snapshots in time where someone says, well, it's colder here, it's hotter there. Over time, it's changing. I think it's measurable in Phoenix, and I think we have to do more about it. Yes, it is the heat island effect for agriculture. That's measurable with objective data. Is there a plan to reduce watering of golf courses? Can the live grass be replaced with faux grass? Yes to both. I don't think it's enforced. It is voluntary as of right now while we're in a stage 1 water alert. I think once we hit stage 2, which again is predicted for next year, there will likely be enforceable restrictions on golf courses and other businesses. With live grass, if it is private property with restrictions, that's something that could change. Golf courses typically don't use turf. I don't think that will ever change unless it's required. I don't think it will ever be voluntary. There's a comment, I live in an old neighborhood that has canal irrigated lots. Is that a bigger benefit, possible water leaf versus higher mosquito counts? I don't know, to be honest with you. I personally don't think the canals that are managed properly according to the city standards, state standards, really generate a lot of mosquito growth. I do know when they're stagnated. I've called, people I know have called, enforcement with public health departments occurs, it will be fixed. But it requires a call. As far as the benefit, if someone else here has input, I would love to hear it too. And that's all the questions I see as of right now. And another comment, it rained so much this summer up here in Sholo. I hope the moisture continues. We need a good snowpack. I agree. Sometimes there's benefits to climate change. I'm seriously concerned in our lifetime what we are going to experience with climate change. We're at that tipping point right now, the point where I think we're almost no return. There's certain harm that will happen that we really can't undo. And again, I went a little bit political in this presentation talking about development. We can contain that by voting, by giving our voice, by writing letters to planning commissions, by really advocating for these different types of programs. I know Tucson has some. You know, when I created this presentation, I was thinking about how diverse Arizona is. This is a gorgeous state. Flagstaff, Sholo are very different than Yuma, but yet I think we're all experiencing climate change in different ways. And I think we need to politicize this and ask for the programs that exist to be implemented. What I've learned looking at this topic is there are many, many silos. The city of Phoenix has really good initiatives, but no one seems to really know what anyone's doing. I thought for the purpose of this presentation, it'd be good to kind of combine things here. I didn't present original research. There was fantastic research provided today. I felt like I could be a consolidator of information and distribute it, and hopefully professionals who are here will find something that's of interest or value and then diffuse it into communities that you live in. I think that's one value that we really have as citizens and professionals. I know when I speak up as a dietitian and environmental health specialist, registered environmental health specialist, I notice people look at me like, he looks like he probably knows what he's talking about. When I give opinions, I feel like sometimes they're taken as fact. And I always try to back up what I say with fact. But I do think we have credibility and we have ways to share our knowledge, not just with our jobs, but in the cocktail parties that we go to, the conversations that we have with people, and we can like make this a social cultural change where we all do better. Risk mitigation. So another comment, snow tonight in Sholo. Wish I was there. It's supposed to snow, they said that so many times last year, and we get maybe an inch. I will pray for you. Pray for all of us.
Thanks again, Dean. We really appreciate it, especially talking about, you know, one of the most important and biggest challenges that we are going to be facing. So we really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks all for being here. My contact information is on the first slide. I will type it into the chat window. And I appreciate every single one of you who's here. I've learned so much today. I love being a sanitarian, even more than being a dietitian.
We are very glad to have you as a part of the Sanitarian team. So that is pretty much it, everyone, for today. If you have a moment, please do answer this last Slido question. But we will see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for day 2.